Elara stood at the edge of the balcony, her eyes scanning the kingdom below. The Alpha King's kingdom. His people, his city, his rules. The wind tugged at her cloak as the setting sun painted the sky in shades of gold and crimson. It had been 2 weeks since her arrival, and she still couldn't shake the feeling that she didn't belong here. She had been sent to the heart of this kingdom with one mission: make the Alpha King despise her. Her father's voice echoed in her mind, clear and sharp as it always did when she thought of the task ahead. Make him despise you. Elara, get close to him. Make him trust you. And then when you've won his heart, crush it. Her father's ambition had always been sharp, and his hatred for the Alpha King was no secret. Years ago, Rohan, the Alpha King, had stripped her father of his power, his influence, and his title. Now he wanted revenge. And it was Elara who was going to deliver it. But it wasn't as simple as that. The first time Elara had seen King Rohan, she had expected to see a man filled with arrogance and pride, someone unapproachable and cold. Instead, she had found a man hardened by grief, his dark eyes hiding the weight of some deep sorrow. He was more than just a king. He was a ruler cursed by his own past. And Elara, despite herself, felt a deep, unsettling sympathy for him. But she couldn't afford to feel sympathy. She was here for one purpose, and she would follow through with it no matter what. It was another evening when she found herself in the grand hall, preparing for yet another dinner with Rohan and his court. The air was heavy with the scent of roasting meats, fine wine, and the soft murmur of courtly conversation. Elara had learned to blend in, to appear like one of them, polished, composed, distant. But deep inside, she was fighting an internal battle. She had never been one to play such games, yet here she was, playing her part perfectly. Princess Elara, a voice interrupted her thoughts. She turned to find King Rohan himself standing a few paces away, his gaze steady and unflinching. He was tall, his broad shoulders draped in the dark furs of his lineage. His face was striking, though hardened by a lifetime of ruling. His dark hair, streaked with silver, fell around his face in a way that made him seem more commanding than handsome. His eyes, though, they were the most dangerous thing about him. A deep, almost sorrowful brown that seemed to look right through her. "I trust you're enjoying the feast," he asked, his tone polite but distant. "Quite a feast," Elara replied, her voice even. "The people here seem fond of you." A small, humorless smile tugged at his lips. "They fear me. And respect is born from fear. It's the only thing that keeps my kingdom from tearing itself apart." There was something in his words that stirred a strange unease within her. She had heard the rumors, stories of the Alpha King's temper, his ruthless nature. But here, in front of her, he seemed nothing like the tyrant she had been led to believe. He seemed broken, worn, and that was the part that unsettled her the most. "You're not like them, are you?" Rohan continued, taking a step closer. "I can see it in your eyes. You don't belong here. Not like they do." Elara swallowed hard, suddenly aware of how close he was. "I'm just a visitor, Your Majesty," she said, forcing herself to maintain the calm mask she had perfected. "Nothing more." "I've been around long enough to know when someone is hiding something," he said, his voice softening ever so slightly. "But I suppose we all have our secrets." For a moment their gazes locked, the air between them charged with something unspoken. Elara quickly looked away, her heart pounding in her chest. She had to focus. This wasn't about finding answers or understanding Rohan. It was about using him, and using him would be the hardest thing she had ever done. The days that followed were no less difficult. As Elara spent more time in the court, it became clear that Rohan was a man of paradoxes. He was a ruler, cold and calculating, and yet there were moments when the weight of his burdens shone through, revealing the man beneath the throne. She saw it in the way he handled his council, the way he dealt with the countless petitions of his people. He wasn't a tyrant, not in the traditional sense. He was someone who had been forced to become something else, someone who had been shaped by power and duty, and yet she couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to him, something beneath the surface that he never showed anyone. One evening, as she walked through the royal gardens alone, she found herself face to face with him again. This time there was no grand ceremony, no mask of politeness. Just the two of them, alone, under the stars. "You seem lost in thought, Princess," Rowan said, his voice breaking the silence. Ilara's heart skipped a beat, but she quickly recovered. "Just enjoying the night," she replied, her voice light. He stepped closer, his dark eyes studying her intently. "You're not as distant as you want to appear. I can see it in your eyes. What is it you're hiding?" For a brief moment, Ilara felt a wave of guilt wash over her, but she pushed it aside. This was not about her. This was about vengeance. "I don't hide anything," she said, her voice firm, though she felt the smallest tremor in her hands. "I'm simply a guest." Rowan watched her, a look of uncertainty crossing his features. "And yet I don't believe that. I don't believe you're just a guest, Ilara." Her name on his lips sent a strange chill through her. She had heard him say it before, but tonight, it felt different. "Perhaps that's because you don't know me." "Your Majesty," she said, her voice cool. There was a moment of silence, and Ilara felt her chest tighten. For the first time, she realized how close they were standing. She could see the tension in his posture, the conflict in his eyes. For just a moment, she wondered if Rowan suspected the truth, that she was not here to help him, but to destroy him. But then he took a step back. His gaze hardened once more, and the moment passed as quickly as it had come. "Good night, Princess," he said, his tone colder now. As Ilara lay awake in her chambers later that night, her mind raced. The plan had been simple. Get close to him, gain his trust, break his heart. But what if, in doing so, she had already begun to break her own? She closed her eyes and forced herself to focus on the mission. She was here to serve her father's revenge no matter the cost. But as she thought of Rowan, of the man behind the crown, the man who seemed to carry a world of hurt behind his stoic demeanor, her resolve wavered. This was going to be harder than she thought. Ilara's breath caught in her throat as she stepped closer to King Rowan, standing tall by the window with his back to her. The cool breeze swept through the open balcony, and she could feel the weight of his question pressing against her chest. "Tell me the truth. Why are you really here?" His voice was calm, but there was an edge to it, an urgency she had never heard before. He had seen through her. All the lies, all the careful walls she had built to keep him at arm's length were crumbling. He was waiting for her answer, and she was suddenly unsure of what to say. Her mind raced. She could lie again, maintain the mask of the distant diplomat's daughter. But this time, something in his tone told her that wouldn't be enough. Rowan knew. Deep down, he knew that there was more to her presence in his court than she had let on. She swallowed hard, trying to steady herself. This was the moment that would determine everything. The moment she would either sever the last thread of connection between them or tear her own heart apart. "I'm here because my father sent me," Ilara said finally, her voice barely a whisper. She didn't look at him, couldn't look at him. Instead, she stared at the stone floor, as if the words would be easier to say without meeting his gaze. Rowan's silence was deafening. She could feel his piercing eyes on her, as if trying to dig into the very depths of her soul. The air between them grew heavy, and she could almost hear the pulse of her own heartbeat, faster and louder than ever. "Your father." Rowan's voice was low, but it carried the weight of realization. "He sent you here to destroy me, didn't he?" Ilara's chest tightened at the truth of his words, and for the first time since arriving at the castle, she allowed herself to meet his gaze. His eyes were filled with a quiet sorrow, as if he had been expecting this all along. "You were supposed to make me despise you," he continued, his voice thick with bitterness. "To betray me, to break me." A sharp pang of guilt shot through Ilara, but she quickly suppressed it. She had been doing this for so long, playing this dangerous game with herself and with him, that she almost forgot what it felt like to care. But in that moment, standing in front of him, all the lies she had told felt hollow, meaningless. You're not wrong," Ilara confessed, her voice trembling despite her best efforts. "That was the plan. To destroy you, to make you trust me, then break your heart." For a long moment, Rowan didn't speak. He didn't even move. But she could see the pain in his eyes, raw, unfiltered. and it made something inside her twist. You were a tool. A weapon to hurt me, he finally said, his voice flat, cold. I should have known. No one comes to me without an agenda. His words stung, but they were the truth. She had come here for revenge, after all. Yet as she watched him stand there, a man broken by the very weight of his power, something shifted within her. But that wasn't enough. She couldn't let herself care. Not yet. I'm sorry, Elara whispered, the words tasting bitter on her tongue. I didn't want to hurt you, but I had no choice. My father— I know, Rowan interrupted, his voice soft but firm. Your father has wanted revenge for years. I know the story. He turned away from her, walking slowly to the window. His back was to her again. But this time, Elara could see the struggle in his posture, the tension in his shoulders. Elara, Rowan said quietly, his voice barely above a whisper. I didn't want to become this man. I didn't want to be the monster they all feared. But I did what I had to do. I made choices that led me here. And now— He paused, looking out over the kingdom, his eyes distant. Now I wonder if it was all worth it. A wave of guilt washed over Elara again, stronger this time. She had wanted to hurt him. She had wanted to break him, but now she didn't know what she wanted anymore. I never asked for any of this, Rowan continued, his voice growing quieter. I never asked to be the king to carry this curse. But I had to, because no one else could. Ilara's heart tightened as she listened to him. She could hear the pain in his voice, the grief that ran so deep, it felt like it could drown everything in its path. And for the first time since meeting him, she realized how truly alone Rowan was. He had always been alone. Even as king, even surrounded by his people, he was isolated by his own power, his own burdens. I didn't come here to make you feel sorry for me, Rowan added, his voice harder now. I came here to ask you one thing. Tell me why. Why didn't you go through with it? Why didn't you break my heart when you had the chance? Ilara's breath caught in her throat, and for a moment she was paralyzed by his question. The truth was that she hadn't been able to break him. She had tried. She had played her part perfectly, keeping him at a distance, never allowing herself to feel anything for him. But somewhere along the way, something had changed. She had become entangled in his pain, in his struggle. She had come to care for him even though she knew she shouldn't. Because, Elara whispered, her voice cracking, because I started to care. I didn't want to hurt you anymore. Rowan turned to face her, his expression unreadable. There was a long, heavy silence between them, and in that moment everything felt fragile, like it could shatter at any second. You care? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. After everything I've done, you still care? I don't know what I feel anymore, Elara said, her heart pounding in her chest. But I know it's not hate. Not anymore. Rowan took a step toward her, his eyes never leaving hers. Then help me. Help me break this curse. Help me stop being the man I've become. Elara stared at him, unsure of how to answer. Could she really help him? After everything that had happened? After all the pain she had caused? Could she be the one to save him? Before she could speak, the doors to the room suddenly burst open, and a royal messenger entered, his face pale with urgency. My king, the messenger said, breathless. There's word of a rebellion rising in the Northern Territories. They're moving faster than we anticipated. We need to prepare for war. Rowan's face hardened at the news, and Elara's heart sank. It seemed like the world outside their small moment of truth was still as unforgiving as ever. Rowan's responsibilities, his burdens, were far from over. I'll handle it, Rowan said coldly, his eyes no longer soft. He turned to Elara, his expression a mask of resolve. We'll speak later. I have a kingdom to save. As the messenger rushed out of the room, Elara watched Rowan closely. She had hoped for a moment of clarity, a chance to find a path forward, but instead, the world had come crashing back into focus. She had just begun to understand the complexity of Rowan's heart, and now she had to watch him retreat back into the cold, distant king he had always been. But she couldn't give up now. She couldn't let him face this battle alone. Even if she didn't know what the future held for them, she knew one thing for sure. She would fight beside him.